Mr. Locke.
Thank you, witnesses, for your time and testimony today. I'd like to start with you, if I could, Dr. Myers. You mentioned that the bail system is the harshest it's ever been. Those were your words. Do you think bail should be made easier to access after the culmination of our research here?
I think it absolutely needs to be more readily available for a lot of people in custody. I think we can acknowledge that there are some people who are perhaps too risky or the allegations are too serious. We want to focus our attention on those, not an automatic decision to detain, but to be able to focus on those. We need to make release more available for all kinds of others who are there for more minor reasons.
So what are the sorts of offenders that are being detained pre-trial now that you think should be getting bail and aren't and don't have it available to them?
Most of the folks that have been charged with nonviolent offenses.
Okay.
And that would be the bulk of the individuals that go through our bail court.
You talked about in your career as an academic, quote, interviewing justice officials and accused individuals.
Yes.
You didn't mention victims, victims of crime. Have you interviewed them as part of your research?
No, I study the criminal justice system, not rather than what happens with victims.
Do you think that the experiences of victims should have any bearing on how offenders are treated by the justice system?
Absolutely. The victims are critically important in all of this, but nonetheless, we need to remember the very important constitutional rights that we have and that those must absolutely be protected, and that while there may be harm to victims, we can provide those supports that they may need outside of the criminal justice system where they would be far better served.
But why in 20 years of researching this has interviewing victims not factored in if you think they do have a role to play in the way these decisions are made and these policies are drafted?
Because it has not been part of my research agenda. I've spent the time sitting in court and talking to those who I'm interested in the process of bail. I'm sitting in court. I've heard from many of victims about their experiences that comes out in the open court.
So you do indicate that people should, I'm paraphrasing, but you said they should be punished after a conviction. Yeah. So who should be held behind bars pre-trial in your view?
I think a very limited number of people. If we go back 40 years, we used to be sitting much closer to about 20 or 30% of those in our provincial jails were in pretrial detention. I suspect those are the folks that needed to be there, while other folks were able to be better managed in the community.
Do you think that anyone who's charged with first-degree murder should be behind bars pretrial?
I would leave that to the decision makers to properly examine the information that's been provided, to assess the risk and make those decisions.
So you think bail for first-degree murders is actually legitimate at times?
I think in some circumstances it could be possible. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not the one making these determinations, and I trust the professionals who have all of the available information to be able to make the appropriate decision in these cases.
Another comment you had made was that we cannot predict future behavior. You were basically you were saying that we can't predict who will commit future offenses. So I would assume from that you're against 3 strikes, you're outlaws that have been proposed, correct?
Absolutely.
So how many convictions is enough for the system to actually say, we have a pretty good indication this person is going to reoffend?
Well, you know, we might be able to look at measures that indicate that somebody has a record of offending, and those are exactly the kinds of pieces of information that are considered by those who are making bail decisions.
So you do think multiple convictions you do think should actually count against someone in their bail eligibility?
I think it should be a factor that is considered and weighed appropriately. It should not be the driving and the only reason. Each one of those convictions, that individual has already been punished and held accountable for those offenses. At some point, we have to acknowledge that they have moved on. Let's focus on what the allegations are saying of what they've done now.
So someone who's committed murder against an intimate partner, someone who has robbed a bank, someone who has committed violent offenses. They
Allegedly.
are arrested. No, I'm talking about someone who's convicted. They have 5 convictions under their belt. Your view is that that is a clean slate if they've already served their sentence the next time they're up for bail?
I said nothing about it being a clean slate. I said
You did. You
absolutely
said they've
no.
already paid their price.
They have paid that price, but nonetheless, the criminal record is a critical component that is considered by decision makers when making the evaluation on the level of risk. We cannot perfectly predict. We can make predictions on the basis of offenses or records, but they are imperfect, meaning we are getting it wrong a lot.